Welcome to your first lesson of mugshots. Today we're going to be learning a little bit about commas, which is one of the most versatile, ubiquitous punctuation marks in the English language. I'm super excited, so I hope that you are too. So the expectations for our mugshots lessons are that you are taking notes in your notebook, a dedicated notebook for your English class. This way, if you need to look back at your notes later, which you probably will, you can find them all in one place. Also, there are going to be sentence exercises after each of these lessons, so complete the sentence exercises to the best of your ability before continuing on and seeing the answers. That way, you can really test your knowledge to make sure that you understand the subject. If after trying the sentence exercise you find that you might need a little bit more help with some of the concepts that we go over in this video, make sure that you contact your teacher so that he or she can help you with those concepts. And most importantly, don't be afraid of being wrong. Take chances. There are a lot of rules when it comes to grammar and punctuation, so if you don't understand something, please ask questions. We're teachers. It's our job to answer your questions, so you shouldn't be embarrassed about having them. So the first thing I want to clear up regarding commas. It's possible that in the past you have heard that a comma should be used anytime you would pause in a sentence. If you have been taught that before, I want you to forget it because it's not true. People talk differently. People have different speaking patterns. When I pause in a sentence might be different from how you pause in a sentence or how someone else pauses in a sentence. There are actual rules to when you should and should not use commas, and that's what we're going to be going over in these next few lessons. Our first comma rule is as follows. Use a comma and a coordinating conjunction to join two separate independent clauses. If you're not sure what an independent clause is, it's any statement that can stand alone as a complete sentence, so a complete thought. If you want to join two complete thoughts or two would-be complete sentences into one sentence, then you need to use a comma and a coordinating conjunction in between them. I'm not going to go into what a coordinating conjunction is because it's a little complicated, but luckily there aren't that many in the English language. The ones that you have to remember are for, and, nor, but, or yet, and sometimes so. It helps, I think, to write down the word fanboy in your notebook to remember what these coordinating conjunctions are. So here are some examples of comma rule number 1 in action. Let's look at this first sentence. He walked down the street and then he turned the corner. So, we have two different independent clauses in this sentence, which I have written below the sentence and also highlighted in green. He walked down the street. That's a complete thought. It could stand as its own sentence. Then he turned the corner. That's also an independent clause because it could be its own sentence, but we want to put them together. So in order to put them together, we need to have a comma and a coordinating conjunction. In this case, our coordinating conjunction is and. As you can see, highlighted between the two independent clauses, we have the comma and. Our second example is as follows. You can go shopping with me, or you can go to a movie alone. Our two independent clauses, you can go shopping with me, you can go to a movie alone. Those are two complete thoughts. They sound kind of weird if you just put them as separate sentences next to each other and a little bit intimidating, and we're giving someone a choice. So we want to reflect that choice with the coordinating conjunction or. So to join those both together, we need that comma and or. Next up is comma rule number 2. Use commas to set off non-restrictive clauses. So what that means is a non-restrictive clause is a clause that is not needed in the sentence. If you can take that part of the sentence out, and the sentence still makes sense and you're not missing any necessary information, then you need to surround it with commas. However, I know that it's hard to keep different kinds of clauses straight. How I like to think about it is the slice of cake rule. So let's say that you have a delicious, beautiful cake. I'm picturing my cake with pink frosting and sprinkles. If you cut into the cake and you serve yourself a slice, do you still have a cake? Yes. It's just a cake with a slice missing, but it's still a cake. It's still able to stand, and we would still call it a cake. So now Picture your sentence like a cake. If you have a non-restrictive clause, or something that you can take out, like a slice, and the sentence still stands, you still have a cake, then you need to put commas around that slice. When you cut into a cake to get a slice for yourself, you make two cuts, just like you put two commas around your non-restrictive clause in order to show that we could take this out and still have a cake. So here are some examples of comma rule number 2. The first one, Stephen Strom, whose show you like, will host a party next week. So remember, that whole sentence is our cake. We could take a slice out. Whose show you like? That's our slice of cake, a non-restrictive clause. If we took that out and just read Stephen Strom will host a party next week, we still have a cake. We still have a sentence that makes sense, and it's not missing any necessary information. That doesn't mean that we want to take whose show you like out, because we want that extra slice of cake and we want a little extra spice in our life, but we need to show that it can be taken out by putting those two knife cuts around it, those two commas. Our second example, John, who spent the last 3 days fishing, is back on the job again. So once again, we have a beautiful looking cake. We could take a slice out, who spent the last 3 days fishing. If we took that slice out, we would have John is back on the job again. Still a sentence. It's not missing any necessary information, but we want to keep the slice in. But in order to show that we could take that slice out, we're going to go ahead and cut it and put two commas around the part that we could take out, who spent the last 3 days fishing. Now the third example is where it gets a little bit complicated, and this is where some people get a little bit confused. The gentleman who was standing by the fireplace is a well-known composer. So the restrictive clause here is highlighted in green, who was standing by the fireplace. Now notice that there aren't commas around it. That's because we can't take this information out of the sentence without losing necessary information. We could say the gentleman is a well-known composer, and that would be a complete sentence, but we don't know what gentleman we're talking about. We need to signal to whoever we're talking to, oh, that gentleman who's standing by the fireplace. The difference between this third sentence and the first two examples is that in the first two examples, the person we're talking about is named. We're adding extra information like whose show you like or who spent the last 3 days fishing. But we don't need that information in order to tell the person who exactly that person is. The third example, we just say the gentleman. We need to specify who that is. So that green part, who is standing by the fireplace, we can't take that out of the sentence, so we do not surround it with commas. Comma rule number 3 is basically the same as comma rule number 2. Use a comma to set off information that is unnecessary to the sentence. It's the same thing as the slice of cake rule, just this time we're talking about more than just clauses. We're also saying that it applies to words or phrases. In this case, we're talking about something called interrupters. Information that interrupts the flow of the sentence. Now remember, interrupters, much like non-essential clauses, are not bad. They add spice to your writing, but we could technically take them out and not lose any information, so we still need to put commas around them to show that they can be taken out. Some examples of interrupters would be emotional interjections like, oh, well, wow. Parenthetical expressions like to be exact, in fact, or it seems. And transitional words like moreover, however, and therefore. All of those words and phrases can be added to a sentence to spice it up or give it more of a personal kick, but because they're not necessary information, we have to separate them from the rest of the sentence with commas. So let's look at some examples. The first example, people think my English accent sounds fake. My girlfriend, however, thinks it's attractive. So our cake is my girlfriend, however, thinks it's attractive. We could take out the however. If we just said my girlfriend thinks it's attractive, we're not losing any necessary information. But we don't have to take out the however. We just need to make sure that if we do keep it in, we show that we can take the however out by cutting the slice of cake. even if we leave it in with those 2 commas. The second example, my sister, to be honest, did not do her research. So our cake here is my sister, to be honest, did not do her research. Now, we could take out the to be honest, but we don't want to because we're feeling a little bit saucy, feeling a little bit salty. We want to keep that salt in the cake because we like our cake salty. Maybe it's a salted caramel cake or something. I don't know. I'm not judging you for your cake tastes. But in order to show that we could take the slice out, again, we have to cut it. So we have to put those 2 commas around the part that we can take out. Here is your first mugshot sentence exercise. Write it down in your notebook, and then you are going to try to correct it. Exercise, in fact, stimulates the release of endorphins that can make people feel good, but many people still prefer being couch potatoes. This sentence exercise has 5 mistakes. So, write it down in your notebook, try to find all 5 mistakes, and then tomorrow in class, you and your teacher will go over the corrected sentence.